Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Be totally motionless. Listen to nature in action. Okay, well that's a cow over there. So that's not nature as in a virgin forest, but it's still very important in the economy and feeding people, all of those things. Well, I'm very glad that you could meet me here today. This is a really cool spot, I must admit. There they are. This isn't virgin forest anyway. It may look completely untouched. Good morning, fly. How are you? This may look completely untouched, but I'm going to say it's about 130 to 140 years ago. All of this was chopped down. The virgin forest that used to be here was completely logged for the local logging industry mill. But then it was never touched again. So what you see here is over a century old, but it's not the original forest. These trees are called Karri. These are Karri trees. They're a variety of eucalypt gum tree. So if I do a quick wiki search to see what it says about Karri, it's called Eucalyptus diversicolor, species of flowering plant, endemic to the southwest of Western Australia. Then it goes on to describe the physical characteristics. But I can kind of see it. If you care to know specifics, it has a green density of around 1200 kilograms per cubic meter, with an air-dried density of about 900 kilograms per cubic meter. So it holds 300 litres of water per cubic meter, because that would be 300 kilograms, right? Per cubic meter, 300 litres. The heartwood of Karri is a red colour and closely resembles jarrah. Karri is suitable for construction work. It is a little more dense than jarrah, but it is much stronger. However, Karri is not a termite-resistant timber. Well, it is, but it's not as termite-resistant as jarrah. Although it is stronger, so it would be better for building. Although, if these trees are, in fact, 130 years old, they don't grow very fast. Excuse me. Well, because of its lack of termite or white ant resistance, it actually fell out of favour by builders in the 1920s. That's probably saved it a fair bit. Although they found uses for it in wagon spokes and wooden pipes, and they shipped it back to England, where it was found suitable for scantlings by the National Railway and Telegraph arms of the Postal Service. They're quite tall, and they were used as fire lookouts. Before the advent of spotter planes. That's a quick rundown of the Karri tree. You can hear off in the distance there. We're not too far from the highway here. But you would know that because you probably drove here as well. There's not many ways to get here. It is a bit of a long walk, I know, from town. It's 15 kilometres or so. The light is just starting to kiss the top of the trees. Some, I would estimate, 30 metres high. Did you hear the black cockatoos on the way up here? They're a beautiful bird. So much, so much, so many leaves on the ground here. Quite dry. There's also a couple of pine trees just behind us. That's why we have all these pine needles. On the ground. It hasn't rained here for quite a while. And as a result, everything is just so dry. There's lots of twigs. Yeah, how dry all this is. Magpie. Maybe a wren. Not sure. My wife has very sensitive hearing and she can name the birds just by hearing the call. I can't, except for a couple. There's just so many birds here. And a couple of cars. I found a little list called from the CSIRO, so it is quite an authority on nature. It talks about the 10 most spotted Australian birds. I'm just going to read out the list and quickly talk about each one. Number one, most spotted Australian bird is if you know Australian birds, it's the magpie, the Australian magpie. Classic in black and white, yes. And if you've ever heard them, they sound perhaps like a 1960s futuristic computer. They just warble away. They can mimic other birds' sounds. That's the black cockatoo. I hope we get to hear more of those. So around these parts, although it isn't the most spotted, it is certainly the most standout bird. It's the black cockatoo. They're a very peaceful, shy bird. Very large. They must have a wingspan of 1.5 meters or so. And when you watch them fly, it's like, for me, it gives me a quick glimpse of what it might have been like in not the Jurassic period, but after watching the movie, it's what we think of as Jurassic animals. Those big wing movements that as they fly. Fantastic. Although if you park your car under a gum tree that has those large gum nuts, and the black cockatoos decide that they want to eat at that tree, you're going to find that your car is a little damaged because they drop the gum nuts like stones onto your car. Anyway, that's a different story that isn't so pleasant as the sounds that we have here. The magpies are real characters. They're very inquisitive and bold. You often hear about swooping magpies, but apparently it's only a small percentage, 10% or so, that actually swoop. And if they do, you supposedly offer them some food, and you can make them your friend. Also, magpies have an incredible memory for faces, so because they're quite territorial and family orientated, if you live within their territory, they will actually recognize you by face. There were experiments conducted where people wore a mask, or not, and the experiment was able to show that magpies recognize you by face. It's fantastic. Number 2, apparently most sighted bird in Australia is what they're calling here the magpie lark, I know that as the mudlark. It's a small version of a magpie in physical features. Small black and white bird. And as they say here, the name magpie lark is a little misleading because it has no link with either magpies or larks. Go figure. Number 3 is the good old willy wagtail. Willy wagtails are a standout bird for their bold character and small stature. They're really, they'll follow you as you walk through long grass. You think they're being friendly, but as far as I can tell, they're just there for the food. They know you stir up the bugs in the grass and they follow you to catch the bugs. There's many tales in Aboriginal culture about the willy wagtail. They're the spirits of their ancestors and various stories that come down through their verbal history. I don't have extensive knowledge on that, but I have seen and read the stories at one community in particular. That was a community called Mount Liebig, west of Alice Springs. It's got a German name because it was the German missionaries who travelled through that area in the 1950s or so, very recently, and they established communities and imparted upon the local indigenous peoples. They imparted the word of God. And you might think that with such a strong cultural history, believing in the spiritual realm, such as the rainbow serpent and the stories attached to animal figures such as the woolly wagtail, you would think that, well, I would anyway, think that the indigenous people have no use for our notions of God. But it's out there, at least out there. You do see members of the community walking around wearing the crucifix, albeit made out of two metal spoons that were welded together. And his name was Cedric. Lovely guy, really nice guy, tall, skinny. Friendly, so friendly. The people out that way, I found them incredibly friendly. But they still have their church meetings. They have their choir every Tuesday night. They go to church religiously, you might say, regularly. In their little, it's just a tin shed, it's nothing fancy. It's a small community of about 300 people in Mount Liebig. But there's a large quantity of them that are very religious. And it's only been since the 1950s when the missionaries were there. Before that, they didn't live in communities communities as in housing and fixed abode. They had their territory. But it was very interesting spending some time with those. Well, I spent time with the guys. They were talking about knowing what they call the wild men. The wild men are the indigenous people who still live the old way out in the wild. Our reports have the last, well, I'll call them wildmen, the last wildmen coming out of the bush in the 1970s and 80s. But the townspeople at Mount Liebig tell me that they're still out there. It's fascinating to think. He said you will never see them unless you want them to, unless they want you to see them. But they know you're there. There's a story I got told, and I wish I could remember it better. But there's a certain kind of stone that you can take with you, and if you go into the hills where they live, there are hills out there in the outback. And you take a certain kind of stone and you place it down on the ground, and then you turn your back and you walk away. And the wild men will throw the stone at you. And if you can turn around fast enough, you might get to see them. There was a purpose attached to that act. I don't remember what it is. But that's where I saw one tail of the willy wagtail being linked to the ancestors. Number 4 on this list is called the welcome swallow. The welcome swallow's name refers to people welcoming its return as a herald of spring in southern parts of Australia. Small bird, 15 centimetres long. Social, living in groups of up to 100 birds. Number 5 on the list is the galah, or the pink and grey. Very boisterous birds, very rough call. They live in big groups. And when somebody, usually an older generation Australian, says to you, "Oh, stop acting like a galah," it's because galahs are absolutely crazy. I don't know how else to describe it. They don't fly like regular birds. They don't fly in nice straight lines. they'll be flying and screaming, and they'll flip around like this, and they'll duck between trees. When they're sitting on the power lines, they'll hang upside down and try and play fight each other with their wings spread and carrying on. They're very entertaining to watch. The name Galah is derived from Gila, a word from... now you have to forgive me on the pronunciation here. The word is from the Uwalare and neighbouring Aboriginal languages spoken in northwestern New South Wales. These birds have been, I won't say domesticated, that's not the right word, but they have been kept as pets, and they probably make quite good pets, like a lot of parrots. But according to this article, they've lived for as long as 72 years in captivity. I guess the sulphur-crested cockatoo is similar. I think they've lived for 60 or so years. Number 6 is the superb fairy wren. They live in little groups. The blue, bright blue one is the male, and he's got a small harem of females, and they all scour the forest floor looking for bugs. And very pretty little bird. Number 7 is the red wattlebird. Actually, just going back to the fairy wren as a clue to where we are today. The blue wren is the mascot of this district. That's all I'm saying. The red wattlebird. It's got an absolutely ugly call. But the name wattlebird doesn't refer to the plant, the tree, the wattle tree, but it refers to what you might know as giblets. If you like funny sounding words, giblets. It has on its neck, they're fleshy, dangly bits that it grows. And they're called wattles, apparently. The wattlebird is a nectar feeder. It loves bottlebrush and various flowering gum trees. They live in pairs and small family groups. But gather in larger groups of up to several hundred over winter. Well, I've never seen that. Number 8 is the Pacific black duck. Gotta love a good duck. Although they're called black ducks, they are more brown. But they get their name from the bold black stripe across their heads. They're mohawk. They've got a black mohawk. Only in colouring though, not in feathers. This species often displays intricate courtship behaviour initiated by the female They will preen, bob, and flap their wings. Number 9 is an Eastern Australian. It's an Eastern Australian bird. Not over here in the west. It's called the sulphur-crested cockatoo. All white, quite large, with, as the name says, yellow or sulphur crest. It's an extremely intelligent bird. They're often seen problem solving in the wild. I think they use the word problem solving somewhat liberally. Excuse me. Getting a bit of a dry throat. Oof. Sorry. That was a little more aggressive than I anticipated. Can you hear that? Some soda water. Something so refreshing. Even when it's warm, it still feels cool on the tongue. How many languages do you know? Or in how many languages do you know the word for soda water? Possibly more than I do. I only know it in 2. Of course, English. But we tend to think of German as quite a harsh language, but I think it has a very nice word for soda water. Do you know what it is? It's Sprudelwasser. 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 That's bubbly water. Do you like hearing that? The sulphur-crested cockatoo is an absolute menace when it comes to noise pollution. Their calls have been recorded up in the range of 130 decibels, which it says here is comparable to a thunderclap or an air raid siren. They're very loud, and they have a very powerful beak. They like to take the bark off of these trees and just strip it. They can break nuts open with their beak. And apparently you can tell the gender of the sulphur-crested cockatoo from their eye colour. The males have a solid black iris and the females have a red iris. If you ever get close enough, you would be able to know that. And number 10 on the list is the grey fantail. One of the most restless birds. It is constantly adjusting its perching position and swishing its fantastic tail in the air. Grey fantails are inquisitive and will often approach observers out of curiosity. They feed on insects which they chase through tree canopies in dramatic aerial acrobatic displays. It's much like the blue wren, except a different colour. Most birds will only build a single nest during breeding season, but grey fantails build multiple nests to maximise their chances of egg survival. Grey fantails are often reported to start building a nest only to abandon it if attention from predators is too high. Some grey fantails even build alternate nests as decoys. Wow. And then CSIRO on the website here goes on to ask everybody to take part in the Australian bird count by spending 20 minutes in your favourite outdoor space and recording the birds you see in that period of time. BirdLife Australia has an app which has a built-in bird finder tool to help you identify birds. If you're into it, that's the kind of thing you might like. So what is it? There's a list of top 5 Australian birds for each state. And in Western Australia, number 1 is the woolly wagtail. Number 2 is the Australian raven. You know a raven because they've got loose and large plumage on their neck, whereas the crow does not. A few mosquitoes getting around here now. Number 3 is the Australian magpie. Number 4 is the magpie lark. Number 5 is the Australian ringneck. 5 most sighted birds in Western Australia. Now, the ringneck is another beautiful bird here. The ones we have in this area are known as the 28 parrot, and it has a bright yellow-green ring around its neck, strangely. They're ground feeders, mostly. And they're very timid and quiet. If you listen, you'll hear that could be one. They do a kind of a I don't do it very well. My whistling is not nearly as clear as their call, but they're very social animals like most parrots. And unfortunately in the metropolitan areas like in Perth, the introduced species of parrot oh yeah the rainbow lorikeet, which is an endemic to the eastern states. They escaped from the zoo in Perth, I don't know when, a long time ago. And they're very competitive when it comes to their territory. And they unfortunately have displaced many of the more timid 28 parrots from the Perth area. And if you know the if you know the rainbow lorikeet, you'll know how noisy they are, and they've been described as, and I think it's quite accurate, been described as pugnacious. They're bullies, basically. But they look like a bag of lollies. They're so colourful. I can't help but really like them. I had a pet one for a short time. It was a rescued bird. I don't hold birds in captivity. He had a broken wing and was rescued. And he stayed at my mum's house for a while, which at a time when I happened to be staying there as well. And we really bonded with the little bird. Called him Skittles, because he looked like a bag of Skittles. So colourful. He'd go to bed as soon as the sun went down, and if you didn't be quiet, he would come out of his little bed. He had one of those little triangle beds, and he didn't sleep on a perch like birds. He crawled into this triangular hammock, and he laid down and slept. And if you didn't keep the noise down or turn the lights down, he came out of his little bed and screamed at you a little bit and then went back to bed. Skittles. He used to sit on my shoulder and preen my beard. He just like this. Unfortunately, when I moved here with my wife, I didn't bring him with me. I didn't know if he'd survive the journey. He's not, he was injured, but he could fly well enough to escape, just not well enough to survive. And I was worried that he might escape in a place where he's not native to. And that creates the problem that exists in Perth. Did a little video clip with him a number of years ago. I remember the meme that starts off with, I don't always so and such, but when I do, yeah. I did a little video meme with Skittles on my shoulder when he was preening my beard. So he said, I don't always clean my beard, but when I do, I use a rainbow lorikeet. There you go, Skittles. And no woman no crying, no woman no crying. Well, sit. Well, I remember how things. No, I shouldn't sing that song because I don't have the melody down. I'm just going to kill the Bob Marley song. Should just listen to nature then. Yeah, the magpies in the distance. I love trying to communicate with the magpies. Sometimes they look at me funny and then keep going about their business like I'm some kind of weirdo. It's a very important time of day for birds. A lot of birds. Sun is now out, giving them safety. Means they can go back to their business of gathering food and doing their bird things, living their birdly lives. It's very exciting. I've got to go back to my birdly life. The ongoing renovation of my house. I've been working 6 days a week lately, so I've got to take advantage of this bit of free time I have. I should go and have fun, but This is fun. This gets me away from it. I'm glad to come here and meet you every week. Really forces me to put down the tools of my trade and just get out. Disconnect from the material world for a little while. I say that. I've got a microphone and a laptop and a mobile phone and a backpack. But you know what I mean. It's smelling that fresh forest air and listening to the birds, the free birds. See you next week, eh? Might go camping next week. There's a comment there on my on our last meeting video, mentioning that it reminded the person of when you used to go camping as a kid and you'd wake up in the morning and just hear your parents' muffled voices talking. Probably got the campfire going and already brewed themselves a cup of tea. Maybe we'll go camping next week. It's a good idea. Okay, see you then. Ciao.